Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo. I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers reporter for Buha's Block. And Luka Doncic has officially extended with the Los Angeles Lakers for 3 years, $165 million. That will take him through the 2028-29 season, though he does have a player option ahead of that season that would allow him to opt out in the summer of 2028 to extend for about 5 years, $418 million to recoup some of the money that he lost by being traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the LA Lakers. A historic day for the Lakers. I think we all thought this was trending this way, but it's one thing to trade and acquire a superstar. It's another thing to retain them and to lock them up long term. And we have seen certain situations over the last few years go left and not work out. So a huge day for the Lakers. The biggest day, it's between selling the team for $10 billion and trading for Luka. I'll lean trading for Luka. Then the sale is obviously right there. But locking him in for multiple years and really setting him up, I think, to be a Laker he'll probably opt out in 2028 and then sign that 5-year deal. And so we're looking at about 8 to 9 years at a minimum of Luka being a Laker, which I think for this franchise is an incredible feat. Just looking at where they were at in January, February to where they're at now and being set up for the next decade. This is just an incredible day for the Lakers franchise, for Luka, for the fan base. And also, before we get into the analysis today, I wanted to make note, this is an incredible day for another reason. It is my mom's birthday. So shout out to Mama Buha, shout out to Norma. If you guys can wish her happy birthday in the chat. Speaking of the chat, shout out to today, the daytime gang, morning gang. Not used to being live at 10 in the morning, but when breaking news happens, this is what we do here. So let's get, and quickly, one other note. I'm going to go about 45 minutes just because the Lakers are having a press conference for Luka Doncic at 11:30. So I'm going to wrap around 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. Just want to make note of that now. I will go through three quick takeaways from this situation, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So first one for me is that this concludes a successful offseason for the Lakers. Dare I say an A-plus offseason for the Lakers. And the reason I say that is because regardless of how you feel about the moves that the Lakers made, the biggest move that they were going to potentially make this summer was re-signing extending Luka Doncic. And it doesn't regardless of how you feel about DeAndre Ayton or Marcus Smart or Jake LaRavia, or the fact that they didn't make a trade, the fact that they didn't trade the first round pick, the fact that the moves that they made were enough to extend Luka, and the fact that he had a hand in acquiring and convincing two of those guys to come to LA in Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton, like that alone to me is a successful offseason for the Lakers, right? Like they could have done nothing and just extended Luka, and that to me would be a successful offseason because of how it's setting them up for the future. Of course, Luka wants to win now. The Lakers want to win now, and I think they are still trying to walk this narrow path of improving this year's roster with having some flexibility in the future to potentially acquire another superstar, or at least have the flexibility to improve the roster significantly next summer or the following summer. But the biggest thing was it going to be enough to convince Luka to stay? And, they lose DFS, doesn't get off to the best start. And before the Marcus Smart signing, obviously they had a clear need for perimeter defense. But I think they addressed several of the roster needs. They got younger, they got better, they got deeper. And most important of all, I keep saying re-signed. They extended Luka Doncic. And I just think, to me, that gives the Lakers an A+. And again, we in terms of roster moves, I do not give them an A+. I have said before, I'm kind of in like a B+, A- range just based on the available tools. But if we're just zooming out, looking at the offseason as a whole, I give LA an A+ now because they locked up the dude. Like, they did enough to lock him up, and that was what they needed to do. So that's my biggest takeaway from this all, is like, this just concludes objective number one on the Lakers offseason was extend Luka Doncic to whatever type of contract he wanted. He obviously could have done a 4-year, $229 million deal, potentially like a 3+1 with an opt-out in 2029. And his Slovenian team coach had actually leaked that he was going to sign a 4-year, $229 million deal, but that obviously did not play out this way. Like, the 3-year, 165 always made the most sense, and that allowed him, with the player option, to get, become a opt out in 2028 and then extend then. Takeaway number two for me is Luka the stakeholder. And this has been a trend now over the past few months. Really started with the sale, when he publicly congratulated Jeannie and Mark Walter and was talking about being a Laker and having a stake in the franchise moving forward and winning multiple championships. Then you have him recruiting DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart, and we don't even, like, I'm sure there was more people he tried to recruit, right? And we don't know those names, but clearly, like, had a stake in the Lakers summer. And that was like just hearing the stories about him and DeAndre Ayton and him and Marcus Smart, like, that was to me a clear sign that he was going to stay. He was viewing this as a long-term partnership, and there was nothing really to worry about. So I think Luka, the stakeholder, and then now having, obviously extending, and then having the tweet that he posted, which I'll pull it up here for those watching on YouTube if you guys haven't seen it yet. One second. Here is the tweet from Luka. He said, I just signed my extension with the Lakers. Excited to keep working to bring championships to LA and make Laker Nation proud. Grateful to the Lakers, my teammates, and all the fans who've shown so much love since day one. This is just the beginning. Big thing there is bring championships to LA. And I think that, again, like, there's just a lot of signs of Luka being a stakeholder, and by extending, he is inherently a stakeholder, but I think he's gone above and beyond that by publicly complimenting ownership and the state of the sale, and almost being like the team spokesperson, and then also doing some recruiting. And as Marcus Smart said in his introductory press conference, what Luka's trying to cook up here, right? So I think there's a lot of positive signs with that. And then third and final takeaway is the new era of Lakers basketball. And the new era of Lakers basketball started when the Lakers traded Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic. That shifted the trajectory of the franchise in both the present and the future. But this is now, like, again, as I said at the top, it's one thing to trade for a star, and it's another thing to satisfy a star, to show a star that this can be a long-term partnership when you have a couple months to really do it. They did that with Luka, and now it's about Luka moving forward, being the face of the franchise. I think becoming the face of the league. Like, I think that shift is starting. And of course, you attach an international superstar with the Lakers brand, and that is just going to be explosive. And that, like, Luka is now, I mean, he just had the Men's Health story. He's doing the Today Show, and he's just, he's everywhere right now. So I think this has clearly elevated him to a different status in terms of fame and celebrity. And if he wins championships with the Lakers, obviously he becomes a Laker great. So it's kind of a mutual partnership and mutually beneficial in that regard. But I think, like, the new era is here. The Luka era is officially here, and again, it's been here since February, but now it's cemented that it is going to extend beyond next season. There's not going to be this situation hanging out. Like, he could have just been like, hey, I want to see how next year goes. I want to see if you guys make a trade. I'll wait until the summer of 2026 I'll let my contract expire and then re-sign. Like, financially, it made more sense to just lock this up now, but, like, he could have done that if he wanted to play hardball, if he wanted to hold their feet to the fire. He chose not to. He chose to extend. He chose to commit. And now, really, moving forward, the pressure is on the Lakers to honor their end. And obviously, they gave him the contract, but I think there is, like, we'll see what they do go the rest of the offseason or going into the February 2026 trade deadline. But really, I think summer 2026 and summer 2027 are the two big off seasons to see how they build the next iteration of Lakers basketball around Luka Doncic. But those are my three quick takeaways from today's news. Let's get into the Q&A. And again, as a reminder, I'll be wrapping about 10:45 Pacific time to go to the press conference. Couple super chats. First one from Braden Laker. Thank you for the super chat. I love being a Laker fan. Luka steering the ship for the next 10 years is going to be awesome. Happy B-Day, Mama Buha. Appreciate you, Braden. Appreciate you, brate. Yeah, I mean, this is like, I still think, off the top of my head, like the only person I think you could argue, and I made this point before, that you'd potentially rather have for the next 10 years would be like Wemby. And that's just part of it's an age thing, but there's also some concerns with him just because of the size and already some of the health things that he's dealt with. But like Luka's basically the player you'd want to have if you're drafting out the next 10 years of a franchise. And the Lakers have that guy, and we've already seen him lead a team to the finals, lead a team to the conference finals. In both cases, his teams were underdogs in most of the series along the way. And like, he's a playoff riser. He is a top 4 at worst player, but I think top 3 or top 2. And yeah, it's a great day for the Lakers. Ruben, thank you for the super chat. Great day for Laker Nation. Even if it was expected, it's just great to have a guy like Luka lead your franchise. How does this affect cap space in the next couple of years? Happy birthday to Mama Buha. Good question. So he is going to be under contract for like same amount, at least to my knowledge, same amount next year. So it doesn't really affect next year. It does affect obviously going into 2026, 27 a little bit. I think he gets a bump. It doesn't really affect 2026 though, because we were already projecting him to likely be under contract. I think it really depends like what happens with LeBron. So Lakers should still be potentially cap space players next summer, depending on Austin's contract, depending on who else they retain. That number could fluctuate to like 20 to 40, 20 to 50 million, depending again how they structure things. So they should be a player in 2026. Now, again, as we've talked about before, free agency doesn't work the way that it used to. So it's unlikely that they are acquiring a difference maker or like a superstar level player through free agency. It's almost certainly going to have to happen via trade. That's just the way that free agency works now, the way that acquiring stars works now. So you can acquire stars into cap space, and you can use the cap space to help facilitate the trade. So if you are, it will trigger some of the aprons, but not to get like too cap nerdy on you. It just, you can say like send out some matching salary and then use the cap space to also acquire, and that will generate a trade exception for the other team. But there are ways that they can acquire someone next summer or in 2027. But I mean, it doesn't, I think 2027 is a little more complicated because Austin will be making more money and Luka, and then depending on how they fill out the roster for the 2026-27 season and how much long-term money they have, 2027 might be a little bit more tricky. But this is like, we were expecting Luka to resign. So anytime we've been talking about cap space projections, it was always with Luka in mind. Nathaniel Buckley, been following on Twitter for a minute. This is my first time checking out your YouTube. Appreciate it. Appreciate you tuning in. And yeah, appreciate you. Sorry, I got caught in. So I was looking at this comment from Brandon Carroll. Love your pod, Jovan, but you're kind of dragging the stakeholder thing. Like the things you're hyping seem to be ordinary behavior to me. I don't know. I mean, you could like yes and no. So I would say they are ordinary behavior for a stakeholder, but I would look at, not to make this a LeBron versus Luka thing by any means, but like look at the way like LeBron did not publicly comment on the sale of the team. LeBron did not recruit DeAndre Ayton or Marcus Smart. Both players said that they did not speak to LeBron during the process or immediately after the process. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton was with LeBron when the team was there in Vegas, and they had their like little photo op. But I think that, and LeBron's situation is maybe unique, so that's maybe not the best comparison. But the point is, like, there are stars can lead in a variety of ways or can engage in a variety of ways, and we've seen different guys handle these types of situations different ways. But Luka has been, if you just like looked at his actions, immediately tweets about the sale, and then you find out he's trying to recruit these guys and talking about the future with these guys. Like, those are little things. I'm not trying to overhype them and say like no one has ever done these things before or it is like this unique thing. But those were just signs to me that Luka was invested in the franchise, and the fact that he's talking about winning championships. And again, like, if you look at other statements, like, it's just different being a Laker compared to other teams, because you look at, of course, everyone wants to win championships, but that's not always the way that it's framed. It's just more about like excited for the future, or like if you look at other statements people have released when they re-sign or extend, it's not always framed that way. And of course, I think it's intentional from Luka, just because he knows the franchise he's playing for and the expectations that come with it. But I'm not trying to overhype it by any means. I'm just saying that he is clearly invested and publicly invested. And I think that's like the key to me, that there are guys who will be invested, but not necessarily be putting it out there and just making it known. And I think there's been a lot of positive kernels throughout this offseason with Luka and the Lakers. Kwavi777 says it shows Luka's committed. That's basically what I'm saying. It's just like a further confirmation. Of course, he's committed by extending, and that's the most important thing. Like, the words only carry so much weight when, you know, there's an actual thing to do, like extending. But I just think it's a good thing. Civic Citizen, do you see Luka telling the team to trade everything for a player he wants? I don't think that's the way that Luka is wired. I do think he wants to win now, and again, it's a bit of a balancing act for the team to try to put the best team possible on the court in the present while maintaining future flexibility, both with their cap sheet and future assets. So, I mean, I think they're going to be aggressive this season and try to find a move that upgrades the roster. And I think have some time to reflect on what they feel is the greatest priority or greatest couple priorities. Like, I think from my vantage point, it's clear that they still need more defense and more so, I would say, two-way defense, because I do think some of their best defender, like, they have some good defenders on the perimeter, guys like Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, to a lesser extent, Jake LaRavia. But for at least three of those four players, they trend far more defensive than offensive. And I still think they're kind of in this position where they have to balance. There's an imbalance within the roster and just setting lineups. Like, you got to make sure you have a certain amount of offensive guys and a certain amount of defensive guys. And I think some of the better teams in the league don't have the same offense defense questions. Like, it's okay to maybe have one of them in one spot, but I feel like the Lakers kind of have at least two, if not three spots in most lineups where they're kind of playing that game. So I think that's the biggest thing is addressing, like, if there's a way to upgrade that spot in the rotation and put a real two-way wing next to LeBron, Luka, and Austin, like that to me is still the biggest thing. And then smaller thing, like, would just be more of a defensive backup center. But I don't think he's going, like, I think if he really wanted them to trade everything, that would have already happened, because it makes more sense to do it now than at the trade deadline, just from a continuity and like team building perspective. So he clearly had a say in the DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart signings, and I think we'll see how aggressive they end up being during the season. Civic Citizen, what happened to our handles? I missed my Jake from State Farm. I'm not sure what happened to the handles. Yeah, I see the Jake from State Farm logo, but yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Shout out to my mom for the super chat. Again, it is her birthday, so make sure to wish her happy birthday. Great news for the Lakers. Shout out to Ruben and Agora Homeboy. Thanks everyone for all your support. Please remember to hit the like button. Thanks, XOXO Mama Buha. Love you. Happy birthday. I owe you a call. Another call. L.A.23 Jovan, is the Lakers presser going to be live on Spectrum? I don't think so. It's going to be on YouTube. I don't know if it's going to be on Spectrum. Maybe it'll probably be on Spectrum. Now that I think about it, it'll probably be on Spectrum, but it's going to be on YouTube for sure, on the Lakers YouTube channel. Didi says, Jovan, love seeing you on Spectrum Sportsnet. I appreciate that. I just did Spectrum on Thursday, and I'll be doing it in a couple Thursdays from now on the 14th. So be on the lookout for that. My mom says that YouTube has changed the handles on YouTube. Okay, so I guess that's, yeah, I didn't change anything on my end. Mbino says, I mean, do we hear about Jokic or SGA making recruiting calls? No, we don't. And look, sometimes people do stuff in private and they don't want it. Like, I think it partly depends on the ethos of the organization. Like, just think about the Spurs back in the day. Like, they were a very private, you didn't hear anything coming out like that. So, and the Lakers are private in certain regards, but maybe Jokic, like, I know Jokic was on board with the Westbrook signing last summer. So I think that was someone that he partly recruited or at least signed off on. So there are maybe some examples, but I think, again, like, given it's also different because SGA was traded to OKC after his rookie year and like has been propped up as the franchise player for 5-6 years, right? And they've groomed him into that. And then Jokic was acquired by Denver and has been a homegrown star who grew into who he's been. Luka was just traded to the Lakers. I mean, at this point, almost exactly 6 months ago. But like, it's just a fresher situation. And Luka was at a different stage of his career than SGA was when he was traded. He had a lot of leverage, and we've seen stars use their leverage to hold their franchise's feet to the fire in a way that forces them to acquiesce to what the star wants. And Luka did not do that. Luka was just on board, and it was like, as long as you get some of the guys I want, and it was low risk, low stakes from the Lakers side of just signing guys with non-taxpayer MLE and biannual exception, like, improve the roster, get deeper, get younger, get better defensively, and I'm staying. And that's exactly what happened. Harry Chinani. What up, Harry? Thank you for the super chat. Have you seen 80's recent posts? Not sure what's going on with him. Hope he's okay. Yes, I have. I don't know what's going on, and I'm not going to speculate on that, obviously, but I hope everything's okay with AD. As I've said before, he is potentially my favorite athlete I've ever covered in that conversation. Like, one of the nicest dudes, immediately knew my name, and like, that's a small thing, but that carries weight with beat writers. And sometimes I'll like, because you always introduce yourself when you meet a player, and very few of them actually remember you and in terms of your name, and like, you have to keep reminding them. And like, AD immediately knew, and like, that was something that always stuck out with me. And he was always cool to talk to after practice or in front of his locker, and he would always make time, especially on the road. Like, we talked to him in a presser, then pull him aside for a question or to clarify something, and he was always cool with that. So I have nothing but positive things to say about AD, the person, and obviously was a great player, future first ballot Hall of Famer, future going to have his jersey retired by the Lakers. So wish him nothing but the best, and have nothing but positive things to say about him. And I don't know what's going on, but I hope he's okay. Alvin 28. great offseason, but the backup center, thank you for super chat. Great offseason, but the backup center is scotch tape and the backup guard spot is duct tape. Both might not hold up in the playoffs. Hope for a midseason trade. Fair, all fair. I think it depends. So it depends how they structure things, because I think if you are, and this is where like the Lakers have a unique roster build because Luka and LeBron are functionally point guards / guards offensively, but forwards defensively. And the two closest situations off the top of my head in the NBA that are like this are Boston, or like was Boston, the previous version of Boston, where Tatum and Brown were often the primary ball handlers, but more of wings / forwards defensively. And then Orlando with Paolo and Franz, who are obviously big forwards defensively, but offensively are the primary ball handlers / initiators. And it's an imperfect comparison because Luka and LeBron are both in a completely different class of passer and playmaker compared to those other four guys. But it's like the player archetype is like in a way similar, where just offense guardish, defense forward. And that creates a situation where, like, if you think about some of the players that have thrived in those situations, in Orlando, it's like a Jalen Suggs who offensively doesn't need the ball, but defensively can guard backcourt players. In Boston, a Drew Holiday, a Derek White, and those guys can handle the ball and initiate the offense, run the offense, but defensively can guard backcourt players. And I think that's what the Lakers are trying to build with like adding a Marcus Smart. Now, I think it's been a couple years since we've seen him guard guards at a high level. He has shifted more at this stage of his career toward being like a wing defender or a forward defender. So I think that's like the one kind of concern for me with that is I just don't know if he's equipped to guard the De'Aaron Fox, Darius Garland, John Morant type of guys. I think they're a little bit too quick and explosive for him, but he might be the best option. I think it's between him and Austin. But if they're, to get back to the guard point, like if they're offensively running things through Luka, LeBron, Austin, and Marcus, I think you can be fine with those four guys running the offense, obviously. Like more than fine, of course. But like you're going to get your guard offense through those four. The question is the defensive end, right? Because again, LeBron and Luka are forwards defensively. Austin is a guard. Marcus Smart is this hybrid. And that probably leads to a lot of Gabe Vincent or like a decent amount of Gabe Vincent. And then is Dalton Connect in the mix? Are they going a bit bigger with just more Rui and Vando and sliding everybody else down? Like, I think that's the question for JJ Redick here. But I'm with you in general. Like, I think depending on how they structure the starting lineup, if Gabe is the third guard, I think that's a little bit too high for him. I think Gabe at this stage of his career is probably more of a fourth guard or like 4.5 guard. And what I mean by that is like, in the pecking order of the rotation, like if Smart's coming off the bench, then Gabe's more the fourth guard. If Smart's starting, then Gabe gets elevated a bit. And then the backup center spot, I'm with you. Like I think Jackson's fine, but I don't know if Jackson's not like a matchup proof backup center. Maxi Kleba, there's some questions just about him coming off injury and what shape and state he's going to be in going into next season. He was not looking good last season, so he could just be on the decline as a guy in his early 30s. So I'm with you. Like I think ideally Christian Koloko becomes good enough where they can make a trade at some point, potentially dump Jackson or Maxi and then elevate Koloko to the roster, or maybe they're acquiring a backup center in a trade. But I think they need a more like Ayton, Kleba, and Jackson all trend more offensive than defensive. They don't have a true defensive big. Like Ayton's defensive numbers are solid, but he's still much more of an offensive player than a defender. So I still think it's a notable need for them. DJJ E928, thank you for the super chat. Luka took a haircut off, follow suit Austin. Yeah, I think it's just speculating, so please don't aggregate this or quote me on this. But like, I think Austin would, depending on the context of the situation. I just think, like, compared to the extension that was offered, he's gonna make. I've been saying it for months. He's gonna make $30+ million. regardless, I don't want to start the Austin discourse because I know it gets spicy in here, but Austin is making 30 plus million for the Lakers or someone else. And, but maybe he will do that. We'll see. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Lakers should stop caring so much about 2027 and go all in now. Luka's in his prime and they still have LeBron. Joker Giannis is probably unlikely. I lean more your direction than not. I think it depends what is like. If your all-in move is trading for Andrew Wiggins, for example, I think it makes you better, and I think you are closer to a title. I don't know if that's enough of an all-in move to really elevate you to that OKC Denver level, in my opinion. So that would be my one. And look, like I've been saying it for those who followed me last summer, those who have followed me this summer. I'm always on board with going all in, trading the picks, going for it now. Like I believe in going for it. I believe in building the roster in the summer and not during the season, because then you disrupt continuity and it just gives you this like 20 to 30 game window to try to, you got to hope everyone stays healthy. You got to hope you gel. There's just like not a lot of margin for error if you're making an in-season trade, even if the price is better or you potentially get a better player. In a lot of ways, I think it lowers your championship ceiling just based on what we've seen from NBA history. Teams rarely make an in-season trade that impacts the championship race. It's often you now have to have another summer and another season and maybe even another season. It's usually a 2 to 3 year process of building a championship contender. And even going back, Boston was a multi-year process. OKC was like a 3-year process. Denver was a multi-year process. Golden State was obviously like, kind of a weird gap situation post KD, and Milwaukee was a multi-year. So like every team, Toronto was kind of thrown together with Kawhi in 2018 and then Marc Gasol at the deadline, but that's more of an exception than the norm. Most of these teams, and you could argue the Lakers, depending on how you look at it, have been a multi-year situation, but if they are making a big trade at the deadline, like that potentially disrupts that. So I'm with you, and depending on the trade, but if looking at the trade market, looking at what's been out there, I don't know that the Lakers could have made that level of move to be worth the first round pick. Like I go back and forth with it, right? Because I do think if you put Rui, Dalton, and a first on the table, you should be able to get something that's worth an upgrade. But I think it would have to be better than Andrew Wiggins, and I don't know right now what that is. Hey, Chinani. I hear Middleton might be bought out. Good option for us. Or Amir Coffee, need a bigger 3-and-D wing. I would be interested in either one of those guys from a talent perspective. I think the issue for me with both players is I don't think either one is a lockdown defender. I think Amir Coffee is like in theory a 3-and-D wing, but he trends like, again, 3-and-D. There aren't many 3-and-D wings where like guys are a plus on both sides. Like it is relatively rare. I think even a guy like a Josh Hart gets thrown in that mix, right? But he's obviously much better defensively than he is offensively. Though offensively, he has some utility as a screener, as a cutter, as a offensive rebounder. But like he's a streaky shooter who teams will ignore, and so I think it gets thrown around a lot. I'm with you in them needing one. I think with Middleton, he's aged a bit. He's in his early 30s. He's no longer as good defensively as he was in his prime in Milwaukee. And then with Amir Coffee, I think he's an average to slightly below average defender who does have a nice physical profile with the 6'7" frame and athleticism, but isn't really like a lockdown guy. It never really clicked in the Clippers rotation, like fully like long, full time. So that's a little bit of like a yellow flag for me, but I was on board with them signing Amir Coffee, so I'm open. Like I'm cool with it depending on how they facilitate that. But remember, right now they're so close to the first apron that they are not in a position to sign a player. Like they have a roster spot, but they would have to clear some additional space. Reminder, I am leaving in about 10 minutes because I have to go to the Luka press conference. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Look at free agency. I'd rather have GP2 than Gabe, Chris Boucher than Maxey. Agreed on both. Yes. And this is like, to me, the again, to kind of contradict, well, to sort of contradict myself from earlier. I don't know if there was an all-in move for them necessarily this summer, and they might just have to be patient with that and wait closer to the deadline. But they could have done a salary dump and been, I think, more aggressive with that. And that's where I will have some criticism for them. And this has been a thing now where we've seen them mismanage some expiring contracts through the years. You think about the Mo Bamba, Malik Beasley contracts, and it just, they sometimes will like, they really don't. One thing we could say for certain with this front office, and you could make an argument for it or against it, but they really do not like attaching assets to dump players. And granted, they have had relatively limited assets following the AD trade and the Westbrook trade, and those taking up swaps and firsts and young players. And so I get it to an extent that they have to be careful with how they manage their assets. But in general, I think that they've been very risk averse when it comes to using assets to get out of self-inflicted holes, which like Maxey, you wonder, could they have done a different version of the Luka trade where they didn't get Maxey and maybe they got someone else? Or with Gabe, it's been now kind of kind of after that first season, it was clear he had a really rough year. Like, could you have dumped him last year? Or could you have dumped him this summer? So I'm with you. Like, I think certainly that there's some mid-sized salaries on this roster that there are better players that could be, like, if you replace both of those guys with minimum guys that are better, then you're saving upwards of like $18 million and you're almost getting out of the luxury tax. So yeah, it's but yeah, I agree. I'd rather have both guys. Toon Spade 4646. Does the Dillon Brooks trade move Lakers up a tier? Depends on the trade. Potentially, I think so. Like, if it's, I guess the thing is, and I know I'm probably going to light the chat on fire with this one, but I mean, you probably have to put Rui in the trade, and I don't love that. I think you could make a case that I think Rui's a much better offensive player than Dillon Brooks. I think Dillon is better defensively, but I wonder if, like, one thing, and I've made this point before, maybe this is just like too much of my pet peeve with role players, but I really, and I'll be honest, and I said this in the Marcus Smart breakdown, like, Marcus Smart kind of has some of this too, and that's like one of my biggest concerns with him, is I just don't like role player perimeter guys who think they're better than they are offensively. And I think Dillon Brooks, we have the track record of, like, yes, he will have the night he goes for 25, and he has been a consistent scorer for his teams, but it's often been very inefficient. He's often been a guy hovering around 40% shooting. He often has a below league average true shooting percentage, and you put up with it because he's so good defensively, and he brings this culture and this toughness, and he's an irritant. But I just think there's this offensive side to it where he will just, for lack of a better term, like, hijack stretches of a game and be like, this is the Dillon Brooks show. And I think it's detrimental. So, like, I guess he's better offensively than Rui is defensively. I think it's close, but I don't know. I don't think I guess I'd consider, like, for the fit and for what the Lakers need, I would consider, if you flipped Rui for him and started him and had Marcus Smart coming off the bench, like, I think that brings some better two-way balance. But there's a lot of downside, in my opinion, with that. Also, Lauren says Rui has a higher 2K rating, and that's a big one. Kevin, thank you for the super chat. Looking back at that Luka trade, we should add DK for Grimes. Mavs probably agree, but they later trade Grimes for 1 second for Caleb Martin. I mean, I would also have said, I mean, I said at the time too, but I would have preferred Dalton instead of Max and keeping Max. And that, like, right now, if it was Luka, Austin, Max, LeBron, Ayton with Smart coming off the bench, I really like that. And I think Max was someone who was becoming a lockdown backcourt defender, and then could even defend some threes depending on the player. So that would have been ideal. Harry Chinani, I hope JJ gives more minutes to the bench during regular season so that they are playoff ready. I would preserve LBJ and not play him more than 32 minutes. He's always cooked come playoff time. I think so. I'm with you in general, and I do think JJ played the bench I'm gonna pull it up here just to refresh, but he played the bench. I feel like a decent amount in the regular season. They also, I mean, this is another thing though, where when you make an in-season trade, you now have to fast track that chemistry during the regular season. So I think it puts pressure on you to play a more playoff style rotation and play your starters more minutes. Because really a big thing is like when you look at certain lineups and team success in the playoffs is like looking at that data sample in the regular season and how many minutes, how many possessions did they play together. And I know JJ's big on that. And I feel like that's just like another factor that you have to consider when making an in-season trade. Looking at it, so Luka was at 35, Austin was at 35, LeBron was at 35. Obviously, LeBron and Austin that precedes Luka's arrival. AD was at 34, but it doesn't really matter. Rui was at 32. DFS was at 29. I'll skip D'Lo and Max. Gabe was at 21. Jackson was at 20, though that was heavily influenced by starting 35 games. DK was at 19. Goodwin was at 19. Vando was at 16. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think the bench was that crazy during the regular season in terms of being limited. I don't know that anyone, like DFS was playing 29 minutes off the bench, and that included some games he started. Gabe was at 21 minutes. I don't think he really should have played more than that. Dalton at 19. Maybe for stretches he could have played more, but that feels more in line. Goodwin at 19. Like I feel like those are all fair numbers, but I think certainly he needs to rely on them more in the playoffs and like have more trust in them. And maybe I think it might be more like experimenting more with the bench and different schemes and lineups and rotations rather than necessarily playing them more, if that makes sense. So I am agreeing with you, just kind of reframing it. I would preserve LeBron too. I just know that LeBron has been, I mean, the most infamous example was 2023-24 opening night in Denver, where LeBron plays 29 minutes and loses his shit with Darvin and the coaching staff because granted, they did not manage that game well. They were up with 8 minutes left, and then they pull LeBron, and then by the time he comes back, the game's over. So they could have certainly handled the rotation better. But yeah, I mean, LeBron has been reluctant to decrease his minutes, so that's something you got to figure out with him. Gerald Martin, how do you feel about Miles Bridges and Josh Green? I've talked about both guys before, so I would point to, it was a couple streams ago, quick thoughts. Like you just have to address it with Miles Bridges. There obviously are some, we'll say, complicated things with his past that you are going to have to address, that if you trade for him, there's going to be questions. So that is something that you have to weigh, and that is something that teams weigh when we talk about players off-court history. In terms of him on the court, I really like the fit. That would be a package that if we're building it out with Rui and maybe a protected first for Bridges and Green, that would be something I would consider. Again, depending on, like, you got to match the salary a little bit more, but that is something that, if you could do it for a second and a swap or two or something, like I would for sure do that. Protected first. I don't know. I do really like Miles Bridges, though. I think he's a better player than Rui. I think he would fit well with the starters. Not quite the level of defender I think that you want if we're just talking like ideally, but I think that gives them two better two-way-ish wings. Brent Diggy, thank you for the super chat. If you had a hot take on a superstar who might link up with Luka in the coming years, who do you think? I mean, to be honest, I think because the Lakers are the Lakers, I would say Jokic or Giannis, just from like the Lakers go big fish hunting, and that is a pretty big fish. I guess maybe Ant would be my random, my hot take of a superstar who could link up depending on how things go. But yeah, I think Giannis and Jokic make more sense just from a fit perspective, I think. I mean, I don't know if Jaylen Brown would be a guy who qualifies on that level, but maybe Jaylen Brown. Harry Chinani, what do you think they will do with the last roster spot if they don't make a trade? Again, they are in a position where they cannot, there's a point in the season, I don't know the exact date, but there's a point in the season where the prorated amount of salary would be under that. They're around $1 million, a little bit over $1 million away from the first apron. So there is a point in the season when you can sign someone and be okay. I want to say it's around the trade deadline somewhere in that time. So they have to make a trade to open up flexibility to add another player. So that is something that they would have to they have to do that if they want to add another player. So I think it, as we've seen, they added Jordan Goodwin off of a 2-way contract. Maybe they do something similar with Christian Koloko or a different player that performs well. But I as of now, there's actually nothing they could do. And this is going to be my last one that I'm going to wrap just because I have to go to the Luka press conference. Super chat from WG Cop 3. I know these usernames are all weird now because I'm not recognizing you guys, but I'm recognizing some of the photos and stuff. Since Luka resigned, do you think the Lakers will start making some all-in trades for the future instead of just working the buyout market? I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think they're still in this position of trying to both improve the roster but maintain flexibility, because I've said this before, but I think it's more so people want to say Project 2027, Project 2026, whatever. I view it more as like the post-LeBron plan, and it's not, when you hear that, you think like negative, like a pejorative of like anti-LeBron. That's not what that means. It just is, the reality is whether LeBron plays 1 year or 2 years or whatever, LeBron, like the expiration date is in the near future with LeBron and the Lakers, whether he retires, whether he goes somewhere else. It's at some point in the next year, 2 years, probably max, that the Lakers will have that 50 plus million off their cap sheet, and they will need to pivot in a different direction. And the worst thing you could do is not have a plan and then just be scrambling with this newfound flexibility and then sign players that you shouldn't be signing, or not have a way to acquire your next star. So I think they are trying to figure out, whenever the LeBron situation is over, whether that's at the trade deadline, whether that's next summer, whether that's the following year, what is our plan? How are we proceeding? So that is more so, I think, what they're trying to figure out is, like, in the short term, can we improve the roster and not give up too many assets? And then for the next season or the season after, really go find that next star and build that next contending roster. So, I mean, I think they're going to explore everything. I don't want to rule out, you never want to rule out anything with the Lakers because they are full of surprises. But I think if the right trade is there, they will do it. But I think it's a high bar to use that first round pick, and using the first round pick does limit, like, 2026 draft, they get access to 3 first-round picks. So now all of a sudden, if Giannis, the Bucks are the 6th seed, they lose in the first round in 5 games. Giannis is like, I gave it the year. This is going nowhere. This is not going anywhere next year. I want out. Well, now you're in a position where you could potentially sign and trade Austin, throw in the 3 picks, throw in swaps, you'll have a couple seconds. Dalton, if he's still on the team, like, you all of a sudden have a package that gets at least competitive. Like, there are going to be teams that could beat you, but if Giannis has a short list of teams he wants to go to, and you're one of them, and you could outbid some of these other big markets that he's probably going to want to go to, that's interesting, right? So I think the Lakers, again, are kind of walking two paths right now. And I think they are more future focused, but that doesn't mean that in the present, there won't be opportunities for them to improve. But I'm going to wrap here because I have to go to El Segundo for the Luka press conference. I appreciate you all so much for rocking with me for the past 50 minutes. I will be returning probably not tomorrow, but I will be back on Monday at a minimum, either going live or a new episode. Obviously, if anything else crazy happens, if there's anything that's really worth talking about after the press conference, I'll hop back on, but I do have some plans later in the day. Appreciate you all. And for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. Let's get those likes up and drop any comments for mailbags or any questions you have for me. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back soon. I will talk to you all.